This next section, we have triangles that are congruent, but we need to state what postulate tells us that they are congruent triangles. So we have, if you notice, all three sets here, these triangles are connected. We had some that we worked on that were not connected, however, these are. So it's important when they're connected, we need to know whether it has a shared angle with the same angle or a shared side with the same length. So you can see this first image where we have this crisscross image, which gives us our vertical angles. And we know the angle here and here is the same angle. So we need to mark that up before we read what this is, what postulate. Now that it's marked up, we can read it as angle, angle, side. Same thing here, angle, angle, side. So we know what postulate it is. Same with this one, we're going to have to mark up this shared side. So this is the same measurement for both triangles. So we have a side, side, side. Remember, it's important to mark this up before you determine, because you notice each shape has 3 markers to determine what postulate it is, because a triangle has 3 sides. Now this one, if you notice, the hypotenuse on each side of that triangle is not marked up. So it is not a hypotenuse. It's not this postulate here. So we know that we have a shared side. So if we mark this up and then read it, we can read it as side, angle, side. Same thing with this, side, angle, side. So that would be this postulate. So make sure you're identifying and marking up the ones that are connected with your hash marks before you determine what postulate it is. Next, we're going to mark the corresponding angles and sides with hash marks. So the hash marks are similar to what you just saw in the above example. And these are our hash marks, and these curves indicate angles. Now, remember, if we have the same angle, but more than one angle, we'll have to use either one curve, 2 curves, or 3 curves. So we know what angles are the same, congruent. And remember, this symbol right here is saying that J, this is one triangle, JIK is congruent to the other angle, which is JCD. So this is our angle, our triangle here. Okay, so how do we start marking it up? So first with the lines, if you could take the J and the I, and I'm going to mark that one up. Now we have a JC, so this is the other one to mark up. Now we'll read the next 2 letters, IK. And remember, you got to separate those with 2 markings. And the next one would be CD. And we mark it here and here. Now, my tool that I'm using is jumping off the image, but make sure you're on the line. And lastly, by default, you just want to mark these up 3 times, and this one 1, 2, 3. Okay, now I took those marks off because of this drilling tool I'm using, which is not that great. I just didn't want it to be confusing. Now to mark our angles, if we have J and J are our first one, so J for triangle 1, and then we have J for triangle 2. Now the next one is I and C of each triangle. So remember, you want to give those 2 curves, and then we have 2 curves here. And again, I'm sorry, this is jumping. And then, so the next one is K and D by default. Remember, we have to make sure we separate those. These should be 3 curves. I need to know by the amount of curves that you create, how many lines that which 2 are congruent. Again, I'm sorry, this is jumping off my page. The most important thing is to understand when you're going from one point to the next that you're jumping from one triangle to the next. I know these 2 triangles happen to be connected at point J, but just understand whatever shapes I give you, that when you're marking one triangle and the other opposite triangle. Now going down below, the last part of our exam is you're going to identify these marks. If you notice, these markings here indicate that these 2 are parallel lines. So you have S and Q and U and T. So I'll write how to identify these, but let me first point them out. So these 2 lines, S and Q and U and V, are parallel. We have these hash marks to indicate that these 2 lines, T and V and R and Q, are congruent. And then we have S and R and Q which are perpendicular. So let me write those out for you. Now, I know this is written awful, but if you look over here to the side, we have S and Q is one line, and the double lines indicate parallel to U and T. The next one is we have RQ and VT, and this is that squiggly line equals, that means congruent to VT. Now the last one is SR. This line SR is perpendicular. Remember, this is the bottom half of like the hangman, and then it's perpendicular to RQ. I hope this helps you. Good luck.